One thing is guaranteed. When things are going well, I'll hear from this guy during the game. When things aren't going so well, I'll hear from him during the game because he gives it to me like in real time. I don't have to wait until Tuesday to chit-chat with Jordan Pugh on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Jordan, we're watching that game, and I think it was the third quarter when you texted me. You weren't a fan of how the things started to play out. So I'll start you off there as we start moving towards Arkansas. But just for a moment, appease me. You didn't like what you saw when they got punched in the mouth in the third quarter.
Yeah, look, so here's the deal. We had our first game where we looked like trash. That's just what I believe. Like, when I watched the entire game, we looked off on offense. We were getting out physical on defense. I thought that our game plan was very vanilla. I thought we didn't expand upon what we did against Florida. I just think that we went into the game. You're coming off a high off the road. I think that you're coming into the Bowling Green game as a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds, kind of knowing that you can win the game, right? So that's where I think the mindset is of that team, because that's how they play. But when I look at the coaching staff, I look at what we did schematically. I look at what we did on offense, defense. I didn't see anything that was overly dynamic. And I think it put us in positions to make the game closer than what it needed to be. Now, we have better athletes than they do. We have more depth than they do. It shouldn't have been as close as what it was. So overall, I wasn't a fan of the game. Overall, wasn't a fan of the game plan. We got it done. That's the good part. But I think this is something that you can grow from, something that you can move forward from. But if you think that is anything other than a bad performance, then you're delusional, because that was not a good performance by us. We're better than that. Through the first 3 weeks, we performed better than that as a team. Overall, as a team, this is the first time, I think, as an entire group that we didn't perform to our best. All right, so does that make you feel better or worse about the future? Because do you feel like it's an isolated thing, they just weren't up for Bowling Green, or do you think it's, man, this is showing who we might really be? No, it's hard to say it's an isolated thing because you got a long season ahead of you, right? But I don't think that's who we are. I think Florida is who we are as a unit, as a team. Moving forward, I think it's just one of those deals where you just have a game versus stinker. Look at what Alabama did with UCF, for example, or USF, for example, just throwing them as a comp. Those things happen, right? Sometimes you're just not up. Sometimes you're in a fight. You're in a harder fight than what you imagine, right? And so now you're having to play. You're having to knock their hope down. I think that's what we ran into. I don't think this takes away from what we do as a team. I think it's a great way for Elko to take that and leverage it as a coaching point, leverage it as teach tape, leverage it as commitment and all-in type of vibes moving forward. But overall, I don't think it's any type of indication of who we are as a team, because we have displayed what we can do throughout the first 3 weeks. This week just wasn't up to snuff, wasn't up to the standard. Talking to Jordan Pugh here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. So, the line of scrimmage, I thought the offensive line didn't look great initially, but some of that was unfair because I know that they were stacking the box. But I do think the offensive line did get better as the game went on, and that's still with some mixing and matching of guys coming in and out of the lineup. What did you see from the line? I thought initially at the beginning of the game, we didn't make any adjustments. We were stuck trying to run a lot of inside zone, stretch zone. And I think that Bowling Green had a great game plan for it. But then overall, our athletes and our depth took over, right? I think that you saw the better unit take over as the game went on, as they started to get tired. They couldn't rotate in the bodies like we can. I think you also saw where the injuries kind of played a little bit of a factor on the offensive line. You're still trying to get pieces in place. You're trying to get continuity, chemistry along the offensive line. But overall, that's the good thing that you could take from the game, is how you started to see the offensive line take over, how you started to see the offensive line get that push. But it's starting faster is what you want to accomplish, like we did against Florida, right? So you want to make that consistent week in and week out. So that's the positive that you take away. I think there were some things where we were trying to mix and match, still trying to get some of the chemistry, those injuries, guys, going in and out of the lineup. I think that plays a factor. But I still think it's something that you can build on. And on the flip side, it creates some depth because it allows guys to play. It allows reserves to play, but allows guys to play multiple positions as well. Talking to Jordan Pugh. Jordan, what do you make out of how well A&M is playing first halves, right? Like, they're scoring on the first drive, they're getting points, they're having some nice leads at the half.
And then in the
Yeah.
second half, the numbers are kind of reversed.
I just think that goes to – all right, so I think that goes to game plan or game plan and the way we execute the game plan. So what do I mean by that? Game plan, when you see us come out, we're thriving, we're clicking on all cylinders, we're rolling, right? Those are scripted plays, usually you're talking about offensively. But when we go into it and after we get past the first, second, or third drive, we start to get stagnant in our play calling and we get less aggressive. We're not as aggressive as we are in the beginning stages of the game. I think if we just keep the aggressive factor, if we keep our foot on the pedal, I think you see us explode even more. That's one of the issues that we saw in Florida. If we're going to pinpoint an issue, we saw that in Florida in the second half, but we also saw that leading into the Bowling Green game, right? You didn't see the offense, you didn't see the defense put their foot on their throat. That's what you want to continue to see. You want to see the aggressive play call. You want to see them continue to push the pace and continue a dominant performance. I think sometimes you get caught up into the analytics. Sometimes you get caught up into, okay, well, this is where we are. We have this lead. Let's protect it. Let's run this clock instead of being aggressive and trying to dominate and take over the game. So I think that's one of those deals where we struggle with that. But I think that comes from coaching. I don't think it comes from players per se. I think that's the plays being called, the nature in which they're running the game. I just think that's something that we got to take over and we got to fix if we want to be dominant going into this SEC stretch run.
Jordan, maybe that's part of my issue with this past weekend, because when you look at the Florida game, A&M did exactly what they wanted to do. They said, we're going to run the ball, and you can't stop us, right?
Yep.
And while they were able to run the ball better in the second half, and I mean, the numbers are nice. I'll take 250 yards rushing, no doubt. Mm-hmm. While they were able, it just didn't feel like we're going to assert our will the entire game. And you got to give some credit to Bowling Green there, too.
Yeah, I mean, they played them tough. Look at what Bowling Green did to Penn State. We said that last week going into the game that they played them tough, but also at the same time, we are the more dominant team. They're the inferior team, and we need to put our will on them. Now, here's the thing I will say. I don't think that we pushed the ball downfield like we did against Florida. I don't think that we had the vertical type of threats that we wanted to or that we are capable of like we did against Florida. I don't think we threatened that a lot. I think this was a game where we go back to kind of like that McNeese game. Let's hold off a little bwhat we want to do schematically. Let's run our base stuff. Let's get through this game and let's get ready to go and play Arkansas, right? I think that's what the mentality was. And that's one of the things where I was disappointed in because I didn't see those downfield threats. I didn't see the movement in the pocket like we had the previous week. And that's what disappointed me. Listen, you know, I know, and this happens a lot in locker rooms and in game plans where coaches don't want to divvy up a lot of their schemes heading into big weeks or big stretch runs. But look, at the end of the day, football is football, and you got to execute the plays, but also you've got to have a mindset to be aggressive. And moving forward, if we don't have that mindset going through for the rest of the season, the rest of the SEC stretch run, that stuff can hinder us, and it can end up losing us games. So that's something that has to be fixed. That's a mentality that has to be shifted, and I think we'll be all right if we do that.
What do you think about the way Marcell looked? Because you talked about not going downfield. He missed a couple throws. I feel like the receivers, while they've been an issue this year, they weren't necessarily the issue in this past game.
Okay, so the week before, we're on the high with Marcell. And the thing that I said he looked good, but I also needed to see another game sample size. What you saw from Bowling Green was you saw a team that had tape on Marcell, right? So you saw a team that knew what he was good at. It wasn't a surprise like Florida had. You knew that he was mobile with his feet. Then you saw them shadow him with the backer, with the safety, with the nickelback. So it limited what he could do athletically from a quarterback position. Now, from the offensive game plan position, I think that it was a lot of simple concepts where they didn't open up the playbook as much against Florida. That was my issue. That's why I texted you the way I did. And I said, we're getting out coached right now. Because you're looking at simple things, man, where they were just running simple smash concepts, simple mesh concepts. Bowling Green was sitting in a lot of quarter half type looks. And I think it wasn't allowing Marcell to really open up his game because we were being limited on what we were doing. So I think it's twofold. You got to give Bowling Green some credit, okay? They came out there, they played tough. They had 2 Super Bowls this year, Penn State and us, right? We're going into 100,000 plus. Hey, we're going to do our thing. But also at the same time, you got to blame us because I don't think that we went in with the right mindset, i.e. game plan, if you want to put those two together, where we were going to be overly aggressive. And I think that's on us as a unit, as a team, as a coaching staff. And I think that's what we got to fix moving forward.
Talk about like leading up to a week. You know the caliber of opponent, the kind of install you want to have, the kind of plays you want to do. You want to keep it somewhat vanilla because you want to save some of that for the tougher games. Mid-game, can you kind of go back like, you know what, we didn't really install it this week, but we did work on this stuff in the summer and the fall as we're getting. We need to kind of go back to that bag. Can that happen?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes, it happens all the time. Happens all the time. There's many times where you have a game plan, that team is whooping your butt. Hey man, scratch all this. This is what we need to do. There's a reason why you have spring practice. There's a reason why you have training camp, because you put your base stuff in, your core rules, your base assignments. Everything is built off of that. And then you have practiced everything to a certain point. You can always go back to your wheelhouse, right? So that happens all the time. And I think that's one of those deals where you kind of saw, I want to say mid-third quarter, early fourth quarter, where you saw it kind of turn the page a little bit, like you talked about with the offensive line. Hey, man, let's get back to our bag. Let's get back to our base where we know this is what we can do on a down in and down out basis. And you saw them pull the game out that way. But going back to what I said earlier, I still think this was just the factor of let's be vanilla, let's get through the game, let's get into SEC play. That's what I think this was. I don't think it was an aggressive mindset and game plan moving for this game. So I think that's what got us caught up, and we had to be able to finish out. That's where I'm happy. We showed some resilience. We fought through some adversity as a team. We were able to close the game out. That's what you love to see, but you don't want to see yourself in a position against an inferior opponent like that.
All right. Yesterday, Coach Oko talked a little bit about spying, and I thought he did a brilliant job of describing how it's not as simple as some of us think it can be. Yeah, just put that dude on the tight end. Like, just follow him all around. So I want, from a defensive player's perspective, like, what kind of goes into when you know Taylor Green likes to do this or the tight end likes to do that, like how it can kind of evolve depending on where the play goes?
It all depends. The spy and the rush or the stunt up front has to go together, right? So sometimes you may pinch. If I say pinch, that means I may crash on my D lineman inside to the nearest gap. So if I'm in the B, I may crash to the A. If I'm in the C, I may crash to the B. That allows that spy. He knows that I have to contain anything outside. If he gets outside that rush, I'm flushing with him. So a lot of that stuff has to go together, and you have to be able to mix and match stunts, fronts, different coverages where you'll spy, who's the initial spy. All that comes together. The best example I can give of that is what everybody saw with Colorado and Baylor. All right, last play, Hail Mary play. Baylor had a guy who was an initial spy, but he was a contained player. All right, that contained player rushes inside. When Shedeur steps up, he flips out and rolls out and ends up throwing the pass. All those things go together, man, and they're a factor in everything that you do defensively. Because if you have a spy on a quarterback, that means you're taking somebody out of the box in the run game. If you have a spy on the quarterback, that means you're taking somebody out of the pass defense. So it's a lot of factors that go into it, and all those things mesh together in order to be cohesive and coordinate a good strategy against a running quarterback.
Talking to Jordan Pugh here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. When you look at Arkansas, I don't know how much film you've watched on them or highlights, but they look to be better than I expected at this point, yet they've played Auburn. They played Oklahoma State ranked, and I have my opinions about the Big 12, but hey, they're winning, so you got to give them the credit there. They're a team that scored 70-plus against Pine Bluff, but since then their offense has been inconsistent. But they do have Bobby Petrino, and I know you were high on Bobby Petrino a year ago.
Arkansas, if we win by 30-40 against Bowling Green, I would be sitting here today telling everybody that Arkansas is the trap game. That's what I would say. The reason why Arkansas is the trap game is they have two significant pieces. They have a good running back. They have a dynamic quarterback. What do I mean? The dynamic quarterback is not a super threat in the pass game, but he is good enough in the pass game. The reason why he's good enough in the pass game is because he's a threat with his feet in the run game. At any point, he can take off and he can extend plays, i.e. why we like Marcell so much. That's the contributing factor. Arkansas plays scrappy defense. They'll create chaos within the pocket. They do a good job of that from what I've seen so far. But when you have a mobile quarterback who can get the ball downfield, when you have a mobile quarterback with a very good running back, I think the running back is underrated. When you have that, that plays a big factor in why they continue to win these games, because it opens up so much more on offense. So you know Petrino's there, you know what he likes to do. He likes to feed the studs, that saying, all that stuff. But the quarterback is the key factor. If we can keep him within the pocket, if we can keep him contained, if we can contain him on the outside, create chaos through the middle of the pocket, I think we have a really good chance of dominating this game. If we lose contain within that pocket, that's when the game gets choppy. It gets a little hectic on our end, because now you're allowing them to have life. You're creating flow. You're creating a rhythm within the offense. And that's what you don't want to do with a quarterback like that.
So you mentioned Jaquindon Jackson, the running back. I'm going to give you his numbers on the year. 472 yards rushing in those 4 games, 8 touchdowns. And he scored 2 touchdowns last week against Auburn. That's the kind of numbers he's putting up.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. But that also helps when you have a dynamic quarterback. When you have a guy who touches the ball every play, who can make plays on the feet, it opens up the run game as well, i.e. you saw that with us in Florida.
Right.
All right? So that's why, like I said before, man, I think this game, if we're going to flip it into a positive, it wakes us up. All right, man, we weren't on our stuff. We weren't on our P's and Q's. We're going into an SEC opponent. We got to get our stuff together, right? If on the flip side, if we go out and we blow out Bowling Green, hey, man, this is the trap. Don't get caught in the trap. Right. So either way, I think it works for us. At the end of the day, what we have a dynamic front. We have a dominant front on the D line. That's going to be able to neutralize a lot of things. That opens up a lot more of what you can do, in the pass game on defense, but also mix and matching schemes like Elko's been doing. I think now you're really going to be able to see that unfold this week, man, with what we do and how we can distribute athletes on the field that will be able to contain a dynamic duo in the backfield like they have.
All right, Jordan, I'm going to make a simple question for you. You look at A&M's schedule the rest of the way. I know we still don't know who A&M is, right? I think we're still trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah.
But, man, I look at that schedule, and I'm not really worried. Well, let me rephrase that. A&M can, and they could before the season started, but now that I've seen these teams play, they can beat all these teams, man. And you know what I'm saying? Like, so this game, to me, kind of sets you down that path. If you lose it, then you're like, I don't know what games you're going to win. If you win it, not that Arkansas is this big beater, but that being said, it sets up that matchup with Missouri, who's going to be coming off a bye week, who's undefeated. Like, it sets you up for a lot of the things we talked about in the preseason.
This game comes down to, I think you said it, who A&M is. You got to find out who we are. What is our identity? We don't know what our identity is because we had a quarterback go down. All right. So now the reason why that's significant is because the quarterbacks are 2 different type of people. Okay. You have a dynamic athlete. You have a good athlete. You have a better pocket passer. You have a better mobile passer. Right. Then you're looking at our run game. Our run game has been building. Okay. You look at McNeese to Florida, kind of a lackluster at the beginning of the Bowling Green. We finished strong. Okay. The question is, what is the identity going to be? And then who are we going to roll with moving forward to finish the season out? Because I think if you choosing between Marcell and choosing between Connor, you're choosing 2 different styles of offense and 2 different styles of play calling, right? So I think that's where Elko, Klein, and those guys have got to figure out what gives us the best opportunity for wins and success moving forward. This game can set that path. Like you said, every game is winnable moving forward in SEC play. You know, even with the matchup going into Texas, I know Texas is getting all the hype this week. I am not sold on Texas. I do not see what everybody else sees right now. And so I think there's a way that you could take a chokehold on this. You know what I mean? Not having Bama, not having Georgia. We don't play Ole Miss, correct?
Nope.
Is that right? I'm going to make sure. Yep. So there's an opportunity, man, that you can really steal this. And so being able to go into this game this week, man, knowing what's ahead of you, I think there's a real opportunity to take advantage of the seeding and take advantage of the SEC with what we have. We have the bodies. We are capable. The athletes are there. Now it's time to put it all together, man, and go on the stretch run.
You think they open up the playbook this weekend?
They better. Because I bet you Petrino will, hands down. You're going to see the 4 birds. You're going to see dagger type concepts. You're going to see threats that they haven't seen before all year, and a lot of movement within that offense. We have that same capability. We have the offensive coordinator who can do that. Now it's time for us to let it go, let it loose, and let's take over this thing.
Jordan, great job, man. Talk to you next week.
All right, let's do it.
Later, man. Jordan Pugh, keeping it real here on TexAgs Live.